Everybody, I'm Steve Ivy, aka Swole Cracker. Obviously, a huge Colorado State fan. This is primarily a Colorado State men's basketball channel, but we also do Mountain West content. And tonight we are diving deep into something really, really special developed by Brennan Williams, something called the Moby Magic Rankings. Brennan from Go Lopes Radio uh, covers primarily Grand Canyon, but has really embraced their first year in the Mountain West. If you're new here, just joining, Moby Magic, I've posted links, and Brennan has also posted links. Uh, it's all about the whole gist of the article is about which Mountain West team is most primed to channel what took place with CSU last year with the unreal run that Colorado State had. Seven straight wins in the regular season at the end. Obviously, a Mountain West tournament title, and then a gritty first round NCAA tournament win over Memphis. So 11 in a row. You know, as a Ram diehard who lived every second of that streak, and, you know, Nick Clifford going non-linear, the bench stepping up, getting hot at the perfect time. I was really thrilled when Brennan reached out for my take on what made it happen. He had the vision. He was the vision and the man behind this whole concept. And like I said, he's really embraced Grand Canyon and their first year in the Mountain West, and so I was thrilled, and we talked about we got my take on what made it happen, and a lot of those traits, kind of star power and clear roles and responsibilities of the entire team, balanced efficiency, and then Tom stepped in and talked about something that's really based on the eye test and gut feel. When I say Tom, Tom Moser, and I'm going to introduce him in a second as well. But we did some things that, you know, we tried to do some analytics and had some discussion and kind of get not just analytics, but a gut feel for exactly what we're seeing across the entire league. So we know the Mountain West is loaded right now. Utah State sitting at 13-2 at the top of the conference, riding, I believe, an 8-game winning streak. Big non-con win over Memphis and a huge win over Boise last night. San Diego State, second place, 3 losses. Just got stunned by Grand Canyon, who went into Viejas. By the way, huge props to the to the Lopes. A sweep of San Diego State. That's something only UNLV typically does. So congrats to Grand Canyon for doing what they did in San Diego. New Mexico's been rolling. Had a couple of tough losses at home. CSU's getting hot, maybe at the right time, maybe a little bit of a little softer portion of the schedule. Have won 4 in a row. They're 7-8, but showing flashes. The conference has depth. There's 8 teams that are in the top 100 in the net rankings, and there is real March potential for multiple teams. So tonight we've got the man himself joining us, Brennan Williams from Go Lopes Radio, the author who put it all together. And as I mentioned, Tom Moser, my good friend Tom, who I've known for a year and a half to 2 years. We've done some things together. Tom is as good an insider as there is and is knowledgeable about the Mountain West from a broad base with his Top of the Mountain West podcast that he's been doing for several years. And also with his Another Night in the Mountain West podcast that he's doing with BJ Rains out of Boise, where he comes on and does post game shows 4 nights a week from the East Coast. So anyway, I'm going to bring Tom and Brennan on. Welcome, gentlemen. Thanks for joining us tonight.
How we doing, fellas?
Thank you, guys. Excited to be here.
Hey, I'm so excited to have you, Brennan. Why don't you go ahead, guys? Just kind of kick us off with this big picture on why you created, you know, how you developed this concept, why you created Moby Magic, and how it captures what makes our league so special.
Yeah, well, as with a lot of these ideas, they generally come at random times. I don't know when this one happened, but I was kind of thinking, you know, Steve, we've talked a lot, you know, the few shows we've done together just about that run. And, you know, I have a ton of appreciation for it. Got to see it up front last year at the Mountain West tournament, obviously. And we talk about it a lot. And so that coincided with we were that time of the year. And also just in general, like, who is going to make a run? All those thoughts collided. I don't know where I was at. And I thought I got to do a piece. And then kind of my next thing was, I don't want to just subjectively pick teams. Now, there was some subjectivity with it, which I think I have some apologies already. And so we'll get into that in a little bit, but yeah, had to reach out to you for, to get the, everything on what that run was and what made it special. And then obviously, if we're talking anything Mountain West, we have to bring in Tom, who I say in the piece, I'm not sure if he's committed to a name yet. King / Czar Baron. We'll kind of wait to see what he officially goes with for the Mountain West. His choice, but obviously we had to loop him in. And you're right. It's a mix of data. It's a mix of eye test, gut check, and all this stuff that goes into college basketball. I think we measured it a pretty good job. Maybe I chose wrong in some of those rankings. Obviously, a lot happens every week in the Mountain West. But so that's how this idea came together. So wanted to make sure we had the right perspective. We paid ode to that really special team. We've even seen Neek, who's going to have a bigger role here down the stretch as well, right? With the Kings, this wasn't a sort of flash in the pan thing. Like, he's a real player. And so, you want to pay ode to that really good team. And man, who knows if, maybe it's a different ref or maybe a small breeze for that Derek Queen jumper. Like, you just don't know where that season goes. I mean, it really is crazy to think about. And I think at the end of the day, that's why we love college basketball. So I wanted to get a gauge for who that team is moving forward.
Yeah, I didn't put it on, but I do have the signed Neat Clifford jersey from the Kings, so I always keep it around in case I want to wear it. So why don't you walk us through, Brennan, walk us through the kind of the categories, the 4 categories that we used in these rankings, and then we're going to get into kind of a rankings countdown. We're not going to walk through all 12 teams, but we're going to focus mostly on the top ones. We'll have Tom talk about mostly dive deep into the top ones, but why don't you just kind of go through the categories?
Yeah, I'll run through them really quick. So we have the NEAK rating, which I know was one we talked about that's going to be really important. We know star power in college basketball matters. You even replied, Steve, to my email and said guard or wing play is really important. And it's not just scoring. I know, Tom, you've probably followed college basketball forever, right? Like, guards are really important, but how many guards have you seen that can shoot 38% and can shoot 17 times a game, right? It's like, you got to do other stuff. Like what Neek was doing last year, it wasn't just taking a ton of off the dribble long twos. Like, he was really affecting the game in other ways. And so it's not just scoring the ball. So we kind of graded all that together and who's going to have the ball in their hands and who has kind of that star player that can take over a game. And the next thing was team identity, role clarity, and bench play. You gave a good perspective on the player who moved to the bench for Colorado State. And listen, that could have been weird. Maybe it was. I don't know. But they worked through it and they had, kind of that clear role identity down the stretch. And I think that's a really interesting thing to talk about, especially having been at that Tuesday night game, GCU San Diego State. Like, you even get a feel for some of these, like, oh man, like maybe some things I graded are different now that you see them in person. So I think that's a really important piece to this. Then we've just got the average of our offensive and defensive, some data gang stuff, some stats that are important. I liked balance from Colorado State's team. I think they were mid 40s in both by the time they finished last year in the nation. And then, our final one was just like, hey, we do need someone to gut check this stuff. And I don't think there's a minute of Mountain West college basketball over the last few weeks and moving forward that is missed by Tom, even though he's on that East Coast. But wanted to just kind of hand power over to him. Like, gut check, you see this stuff night to night. You've seen every matchup, and so I was going to be a little biased because I just watched Dre Gibbs Lawhorn torch the Lopes, not figure out why they couldn't, get through some of those screens. Like, what the heck, So wanting to hand that power over to him and just say, like, you've seen everybody match up against everybody. Like, what do you think? What do you gut check? So those were our 4 categories. We ranked them 1 through 12 and averaged them out. So, that's kind of what we came to via your input, Steve, and then Tom. So, like I said, hey, would I go back and do some things differently? It's a week and a half later. Yeah. Tom, you might agree as well.
Yeah.
But, that's how this stuff works. So we love the Mountain West.
Yeah. While Steve tends to business there, I'll just say quickly, I went off the grid, maybe like in each direction with one team, and my surprise, if you will, was Boise, having them kind of in a 3 or 4 slot, because I thought they had the pieces to make a good run. And then they go their next game out probably a day after you release the the publishing here, and they blow an 18-point lead with 8 minutes left and lose at home to UNLV, and that just kind of sticks a fork in their season. So, hindsight's 2020, and it's weird how like one game just changes your opinion, because now it's like, and then I knew they would have no fight last night after they'd get punched a little bit and get any resistance from Utah State. So watching that last night, it's pretty clear that they're just going to kind of go through the motions. Leon will coach them up. He'll coach them hard, and they might be able to play well for a stretch here or there, but they can't do it for 4 days in a Thomas and Mack. And so, I'll look like a fool for that one, but it happens. So like you said, that's why we love the sport.
I gotta add to that, because I've liked Boise all year, and yet there's one thing that has just bothered me about when I watch them, and it has to do with the guard play. They really only have one guard, and they have a lot of 6'7" wings, and they all seem like the same player, where one might be a little better offensively or one might be a little better defensively, but they don't have guys that can put the ball on the floor, and they get this kind of stagnant look to them, and they don't. I think Drew Fielder's a good player, and I think they have good players. It's just, but they just don't have the right mix. I don't know. That's just. But I've been high on them. I don't think you're off. You've been off base. It's just they just have been a little goofy, and not what we're used to seeing out of Boise.
I think to add into that, and you can kind of get us back on track here, Steve. But last thing with Boise was, if I would have made that rankings a week earlier, and this is, I said this in my podcast, I didn't want to be mean to Dylan Andrews, but it genuinely seemed like there might have been a Y-word situation going on at GCU. Like, he did not want to shoot. Something was weird. It was ugly, and it was a lot of that's in the first game. And so I'm thinking, like, oh my gosh, they have maybe some of the worst guard play in the conference. Like, they might have worse guard play than like the 10th or 11th teams in the conference, if that's what they play like. Then of course he goes for was it 28 and then 33 and hits the shot in New Mexico. So, and then you get it again the next week. So yeah, it changes time to time. So it was fun to have the reaction to those Friday, Saturday games after publishing. And just more stuff. Those New Mexico fans are going to keep coming after you, Tom. So I'm going to send them right to you. They're not coming for me. I'm sending them to you.
Yeah. No, I'll take it. I'll take it.
Let's we'll get going with Tom talking about the top teams and kind of the rankings. But before we do, I have to kind of just touch bases with my. I have a CSU audience here, and the Rams were 8th in the overall rankings, and that feels pretty right. I mean, we've seen what CSU can do with the 3-point shooting potential. They can get really going. They're starting to show a little more cohesion, a little better rotation, but we know how inconsistent they've been, and so I think the ranking is good. Anything you want to add to that?
Well, what's the deal with Pasquarelli?
He's practicing, but unclear for Saturday. He'll be back sometime in the next, I think, in the next week.
It's odd, because they clearly looked better without him last night. Now that certainly could be a one-off, right? Like, I don't think they're a better team without him, but you and I have talked about they play so slow offensively. And that may be because times he wants to use the two bigs, and it just doesn't lend itself to playing fast, but they were very efficient last night offensively. But I think I had them 7th, which is only one spot higher than the consensus there. But they have the potential, because Pasquarelli can get right back to where he was in November, where he didn't miss a shot. He wasn't even touching the rim at all. So, I mean, if he's healthy and he finds his shot again the way he had it 2 months ago, well, then they certainly have higher upside than several teams in the middle that don't have that offensive capability, right? They might not be consistent, but do we need that? All they got to do is get hot for 3 days, really. I mean, technically it's 4, but you should be able to beat like a 10 or 11 seed or a 9 seed, I guess, if you want to make a run anyway. So I think if they get Pasquarelli back, which you seem to think they will, they have the potential to do it, because simply they can. The 3-point shot is the ultimate game changer in college basketball. It just is, right? And Brennan knows that, because the wins and losses for a lot of the Lopes games come down to how they shoot the 3. So, I mean, it's that way for a lot of teams. And if the Rams get hot like they were in November, there's not a team in this league. Obviously, they'd have to play perfect against Utah State, but there's no guarantee they play Utah State. So we'll see. I'm not saying they will do it, but I wouldn't be surprised if they're in the semifinals and then they're just halfway there. So.
Yeah,
Yeah. So yeah,
I
go
was
ahead,
going to add
buddy.
in, Steve. I do like a lot of their pieces. I think, I mentioned this in the article, like they really have to work together as a unit. Like I like what Butler, kind of adds in the backcourt on a few possessions. Obviously, Jorgensen, Bemba, like all those little pieces kind of make sense, but they don't like, if I were to just say, Steve, you've got one possession here and you got to get a bucket, like, do you know whose hands the ball is going to be in or what they're going to do? I feel like the answer is probably no. It's just kind of like, I'm good with all of them shooting it, but I don't know if that's a good thing. And so that's where my concern lays. I like a lot of the pieces, and I'd probably be terrified. Like if you get, if you're gonna get them on Thursday, it's like you kind of got to have some attention there. Like, and if you're a little sleepy in Vegas, you could be down. What was I think that the run they had against GC to open the second half, Steve, that was 21-2 over like
Yeah.
6 or 7 minutes. It's like you look up, your season might be over. So they are frisky. I agree with everything Tom said, but I couldn't figure out for them like where they want to go, at really important times, and that's where I had a lot of problems with that.
And I think that's very fair. So why don't we get into the top teams? We don't have to spend time. I know how much Tom wanted to pick Air Force as being a dark horse. Sorry, I couldn't resist.
Yeah.
But let's focus on the top teams. Tom, let's start with the top, with Utah State, San Diego State, New Mexico, Grand Canyon. Let's focus on those four teams and kind of let's talk through what we see in terms of the rankings there.
Well, I'll say this about Utah State. It came up last night on the show after the game. This is kind of the opposite of last year right now. And I know we have 2.5 weeks left of the regular season, but we're seeing the opposite of what we saw last year. Calhoun had this matchup zone, and it kind of caught everybody off guard. Everybody knows the story by now, and they played. It looked decent enough in December, January, but then by like the early parts in the middle and late February, it got figured out, and they were on a downward trajectory, and they get blown out by UCLA. Say what you want about Cronin, he may have a few screws loose, whatever the case is, but he knows how to coach his X and O's. He was prepared for the matchup zone with 5 days to prepare for it, and Utah State didn't have a chance. They weren't playing good at the time. The matchup was figured out, and they just kind of had flatline, right? This year, it seems to be the opposite. They're trending upwards. They laid an egg against UNLV. They whatever, maybe some other close games in there, but they're playing good basketball. And I don't see any weakness with like their defense. It's not perfect. They're not a top 30 Ken Palm defensive team, but it's good enough. They have plenty of options. And I think it looks like, avoiding a bad loss here would help. But if they can avoid that 8-9 game, if they can get a 7 seed, of course, they're going to have to beat a power conference team, and our teams haven't been great at that in the big dance. There's no doubt about it. But if they can win a first round game, they're a team that like can give a 2 seed a trouble on a sleepy Saturday afternoon that nobody expects anything out of them. I'm not going to say like a St. John's, like they got upset in that 2-7 game last year. I wouldn't expect it to happen again with Patino, but I have no idea who else is on the 2 line. But they can give somebody a hell of a game in the second round. The way that they have different guys that can shoot the ball, and I really think they can. Will they? Obviously, it's a long shot, but I think they can. I'll let you guys speak, and then I can add to it later. As far as the other teams go, I really do think that any of our other teams that get in are going to struggle to win a game. But I'll let you guys get in, and then I'll kind of piggyback off your thoughts after you kind of throw some stuff out there.
Brennan, you want to go ahead?
I can hop in here. I like Utah State a lot. Obviously, I saw them in person, GCU. Little sleepy. Listen, the late Wednesday night, I forgot what the stat was, the late Wednesday night into the midday, early Saturday game. It just, the SEC teams, I think it was, were 2-14 or whatever over the last few years. Like, it's just a nightmare scheduling. The UNLV obviously was a shocker, but, they've seemed to ride the ship a little bit. The thing I'm monitoring, MJ Collins, he's playing better minus the 3. That's my question mark is what is his real 3-point percentage? You have like first half of the season, you have this like second half of the season. Because if he can show anything like he did in the first half of the season from 3, that's really terrifying because Falsev, obviously he's a really good player, your front runner for player of the year, but He was so good in that GCU game and just doing the little stuff and controlling the game, and everything goes at his pace and he kind of dictates the game. I like him a lot. And, and they've got some other interesting pieces that can flash. Like I think Elamine's how you say the name. Like you see the flash and you're like, whoa, oh my gosh, like is that guy is going to maybe play in the NBA? There could be a moment where he's going to be terrified, but he's got some talent. So I like their balance of kind of like old guys, veterans with a little bit of like upside. Like we talked about the Colorado State upside they can build into. I think Utah State does have some upside to build into if some of those guys can really flash. So I like everything about them. But yeah, I think that the size might be just a question mark. Obviously, that's going to be for everything for Mountain West, right? When you have to go bang against the bigger schools, the Power Fours. But I like everything they've got, and I just love Falstaff. That was just kind of like a credit to Falstaff and Calhoun and who they are.
Yeah, let me add one thing. The thing I like that I've started to see out of Utah State is I think Calhoun's figured out. Last year, I thought their bigs were terrible. They really struggled to defend in the interior. And he's got 4 bigs, none of whom I would call spectacular, but on any given night, 2 of them show up. And Calhoun has figured out which 2 to use and get matched up properly with the other team. Some night, like last night, it was Keller out of nowhere, scores the first 7 points of the game. We've seen Templin be the consistent guy, but Gary Clark has come in certain games and scored well, and Elamine has done real well in some games as well. But those minutes change. The only one that seems to be consistent is Templin at 20 minutes, but the other guys go in and out, and I think that's Calhoun really managing and doing a good job with the roles and responsibilities. So I'm real high on them. Obviously, I have been all year. So that's Utah State. How about talk San Diego State, Tom?
I mean, look, it's still the roster that, Mountain West Twitter thought, although it was largely Aztec Twitter, thought was going to be a second weekend team in September and October. The problem is, they can't get everybody on the same page on a given night, okay? Like Bird has been pretty poor for much of the last month. He showed up on Tuesday. It was Tuesday. He showed up on Tuesday, and Waters went MIA, right? Now, Guath, you can't really take a shot at Guath for Tuesday night because he had just come back. He looked great Saturday against Nevada, but you can't expect that every night out, right? He's a future pro, whether it's, a lot of, I don't think we're talking lottery pick anymore, but, he'll play professional basketball somewhere. But it's still like he just came off of this, and you've heard Aztec fans say that it's a little mental with him. He's afraid to push it, because he doesn't want to injure himself again. Well, that messes with you a little bit. And so I just don't trust that you're going to get the Guath that you saw against Nevada for the rest of the season. And it's almost as if Bird and Waters have some type of pre-worked out arrangement here that like one of them will play well, and then the next game it'll be the other guy that plays well. And that's not going to fly. Now, I will say they have missed Harrington in the last few weeks here. And when he comes back, freshman or not, he's their key ball handler in the backcourt, because BJ Davis, for as good as he is, he really doesn't, he's not a true point guard. And Newman's been a massive disappointment, which I'm not surprised at all. I was not sold on him in the preseason. And so they just, I don't know. Yes, we like the pedigree of the program and Dutcher and all of that stuff, but it's not that far off from last year where you and I had conversations plenty of times, Steve, and we just kind of said, something's just a little bit off with these guys. They don't have the killer instinct. They don't seem like I don't want to say that they're not bought in, but that they just kind of, it's not like we want to compare them to the Houston of the Mountain West. I just don't think they have those dogs in them. And you saw they got beat by 30 last year in the first 4 by a North Carolina team that didn't even belong in the tournament. So, if they can sneak in somehow, and it's going to be difficult for them to sneak in the way their schedule sets up down the stretch here. It really is. They might need to go 5-0, and that's going to be difficult. It's going to be difficult to go 4-1, especially the way they played in the second half on Tuesday. Full credit to GCU aside. So if they sneak in a first 4 or a 7-10 game, I just don't see it, because, you're always going to say, well, they have the potential. Well, guess what? They've had the potential for 3 or 4 months by the time the season ends, and it hasn't been harvested. So I'm not going to believe it that it's going to all of a sudden find itself here in the middle of March.
Brennan, you got to see him Tuesday night. Your thoughts?
Man, I gotta be honest. I recorded my podcast a little earlier tonight, and I kind of got I don't know. I just kind of got a little bit of a stink from them. Like it was weird. Like Waff got totally punked. Obviously, he didn't look great. Nana just punked him. Like it's just, oh, maybe I'm only 6'8", 6'9", but like I'm an older guy, I'm a veteran. Like I am just gonna push you around tonight. And Guaf he didn't even want the basketball eventually, like in the second half. Bird was good. I love Bird. I think, listen, he is what he is. He's not going to shoot it efficiently and he'll take some bad shots. But the thing that's really weird for me offensively is they've got like four guys that are the same guys that all kind of like Waters, DeGorville, Simmons, and like they all kind of do the same thing. They kind of like want the mid range, kind of take their time. It's like that's just not. I don't know. I was watching it. I'm like, this is what they're doing to like if GCU gets this lead to 8 or 9, like they're never going to score enough to get back in this game. So I agree with all the stuff Tom said. Like it is mid to late February here. So, you kind of are who you are. And I don't know offensively, like where they're going to be able to piece this together to score enough. And I look at the tournament and I'm like, you might have to win games different ways. It's like, they can only really win one way, I think, against good teams. And it has me pretty nervous because BJ Davis, he's, you watch him in person, he's even smaller than you think. Like, and man, it's hard not to overreact to what I saw Tuesday, but they kind of got punked. And I just don't like watching them on offense it's always, it is who they are offensively. Like they've been like that forever, right? That's their way. But I just didn't like it. I didn't like what I saw at all. Bird was special. I think Bird still has that ceiling where, who knows what sort of mindset he's going to be in Vegas. He might just go scorched earth. I don't know. He stays engaged defensively, so credit to him, even when he's missing shots. But I did not like what I saw Tuesday. I also overreacted a week and a half ago and looked kind of dumb. So maybe I shouldn't be making these bold claims, but yeah.
Well, I've been high on him, but Tom and I have had these discussions the last couple of seasons, and there's just something that I don't, the fact that they played so poorly at home, they're not a very good road team at elevation, and they still have a couple of tough games at elevation.
Yeah.
They've still got to come to Fort Collins on Saturday. They still have to go to New Mexico,
Boise,
which is 2,500 feet, and so we'll see. I just don't know, and I don't know if they're going to close and whether they have enough they tend to play well in Las Vegas, but they went out in the first round last year. So I don't know where I'm at with them, and I think you guys are spot on there. Tom, New Mexico. Let me hear what your thoughts are on New Mexico right now.
Well, I've been pretty consistent about this all year. This is Brennan kind of alluded to it. I take flack because Lobo fans, I love them, but they they love their Lobos, so it doesn't like if it's kind of like when you're a teacher, like and your student gives like a project, like you have to give them like something to work on, right? You can't, it's not all like 100%. Like you got to tell them some, like we do. We got grows and glows. Like you did this great, but you can improve here. I try to do that with teams a lot. Like it's not all good and it's not all bad, right? So like I'm going to try to look for something that I think they can improve on. And sometimes Lobo fans don't like that. But the fact is, like, they don't have that high-end talent and athleticism, right? And so they're squeezing everything. Well, Olin is squeezing everything he can out of that lineup and that roster. And, I mean, they far exceeded expectations. They're still in the hunt, although it's kind of a long shot. They're still in the hunt to win the regular season title. It will require them to probably win in Logan, which will be incredibly difficult. Nobody really expects them to do that. But they're right in there for an at-large bid. Now, the problem comes when they get to the tournament. I just think that the way their roster is, it's not going to play well against like a power four team stocked with athleticism. The only shot they would have, and I couldn't really think of a comparison off the top of my head, would be a team that's like poorly coached, right? And because most teams that get into the tournament aren't poorly coached. There's some guys that I think aren't really super with the clipboard, and so maybe they could draw one of those teams, right? Maybe they can, they'll be a higher seed than that, but maybe they could draw like in Arkansas. I respect Calipari as a recruiter, but I don't respect Calipari as like an X and O guy, okay? I think most people feel the same way, that aren't like blindly loyal to Kentucky or Arkansas, right? So a guy like that who just kind of stockpiles talent, but he can't really coach them, because Olin, he did, to his credit, and to kind of throw that fact in my face, he was in that situation last year in the 5-12 game with UCSD and against Michigan, and he almost pulled that game out. So I know Lobo fans might say, well, if he can do it last year, he can do it this year. And sure, he certainly could. But you saw what happened when, the talent, when I know they played the games close, but, they lose against San Diego State. And they lose the game at home to Utah State, where you don't expect to lose. And those teams are athletic, but they're not like you're going to see if you play a team from the SEC or the Big Ten. So, I love what Olin's done with that team. I hope they get in. They're right on the fringe right now. I just find it difficult to see them getting a first round win. And that's just kind of the way it is, I think, with them.
Okay. You want to add anything to that, Brad?
Yeah, I've discussed this with Tom offline a little bit, just because after that game, the most recent GCU UNM game, I found my mind being blown. Just what Olin, like Tom said, is getting out of this group, and that's not a shot at anybody involved, but I mean, it was incredible to see them, even when they blew that massive lead in Phoenix to GCU, that they're so composed. With like 5 minutes left, there was, that massive stretch. And it's like, it's anybody's game now. GCU has all the momentum at home. And they were just like composed, and they just knew where they wanted to go. I gave, the Neek rating. I gave Jake Call, like, he's, to me, again, a little biased, but man, he just keeps delivering. Again, we talk about with San Diego State on the negative side, at some point, this is who you are. At some point, this is who Jake Call is. Like, he is incredibly efficient. He's making tough shots. When I watch him, I as I just mentioned with some of the San Diego State guys, kind of the opposite. Like, I love that he knows where he wants to go with the ball, where he wants to score. He doesn't try to do anything that's out of his realm. And I think that just comes with maybe a humility and a self-awareness. And he has that. And I think he's benefited from it greatly. And obviously Olin's tapped into it. So I think when you got a guy like that who shoots the three well, knows where he wants to go with the ball, I just think you can, you have a higher ceiling. But I do agree, like, if that infrastructure cracks, mid-game, and they can't kind of keep it up for a game, like, it could go bad. We saw that with Utah State, right? Like, that infrastructure is really, it is really strong, but it's something they rely on a lot and need to have to be successful. So that does make me a little bit nervous with them. And obviously, when you start talking bigger picture, in a potential tournament or anything, you do get really nervous, right? Like Uriah Tenet, he's incredible, right? And he's actually from the Phoenix area up in Prescott. But, it's like, do you really, I'm just thinking power four, just name your team. Like Uriah Tenet, listed at 5'10", probably 5'8", really special, unique player. But is he really going to be able to come off the bench and be a spark plug against, the Santa Clara win? Great. But like, we're talking big, 6'4", 6'5" guards, who are really good. So I think there's definitely, they're an interesting team where I like them a lot, but then in the same breath, you can see where, man, if it goes wrong first day, like it could go bad if that infrastructure fails.
Yeah. Okay, let's go Grand Canyon, Tom. We're not going to leave without talking Grand Canyon. Obviously, Brennan's team and the team he covers, but they're coming off a great win at Viejas and a sweep of San Diego State, and they're positioned right now in fourth place. Your thoughts on Grand Canyon?
Yeah, well, look, being in fourth helps. They'll get the first round bye, so you don't have to win 3 games. Certainly the 4-5 game likely, I guess, at this point in Nevada, but I guess a couple other teams could sneak up there. I mean, look, defense travels. A couple other things that they have going for them is the fact that their fan base will travel. We already saw that a few weeks ago. It didn't result in a win, but they went up there and traveled. So they'll be well represented up there in the Thomas and Mack, the same as New Mexico and San Diego State will be, and Utah State and some others. But also Drew has a history, the program does, of performing well in Vegas in conference tournament week. Now, yes, we all understand it's a different conference. We all understand it's a level up, but these players don't care about that. It means nothing to those players. Demerol was in Europe. He doesn't give a damn about past, this league or who Grand Canyon played this week a year ago in Vegas, right? So in a way, you can throw that kind of out the window. Bryce Drew knows how to win in March. What I've seen this year now is he's figured some things out. I haven't been on the record saying have not watched a ton of GCU prior to this year. Obviously know about Drew from his time at Vanderbilt and some other stops and all the everything that he's been through. But had not watched him coach a ton. I'm seeing now he, tinkering with stuff, figuring stuff out. They didn't have a great non-con. Wasn't sure, with obviously a little disappointed in him because I did have them top 3 or 4 in the preseason. And now you're seeing why they were picked that way. He's figured things out. He's changed some rotations a little bit. He's let the guards kind of be the ones who drive the show there, Williams and Henley largely, and they've done it without Shaw, who was one of their better players in a non-con. And so if he comes back, certainly it's a team that, like first thing I said, defense travels. Okay. We know San Diego State is a defensive power. We're seeing this be the calling card for Grand Canyon. And the other thing too, we haven't mentioned this about any team yet, specifically for our conference. Forget about March with any of our teams here yet, but matchups have mattered. There have been a lot of sweeps. Maybe GCU is a good matchup against San Diego State. Maybe they're a bad matchup against New Mexico. They seem to be a good matchup against Boise. So if you're Grand Canyon, you don't want to see New Mexico. You'd rather see Boise and/or San Diego State somewhere. Not that you want to see them, but you're going to have to beat somebody good, right? And you'd rather have it be San Diego State than New Mexico. They probably wouldn't mind Utah State either. But to think about matchups, they'll feel confident playing against the teams that they've beaten. Maybe not so against New Mexico, but they can do it. As I said, they'll be in games because of their defense. And if they can make shots like they do sometimes, certainly can happen for the Lopes.
Brennan, you're obviously it's your team. You see them close.
Yeah.
Man.
Yeah, I echo everything Tom said. When I spoke with both of you guys preseason, I talked about a few things. First is, this is a new group, so they're not going to have camaraderie. You look at even like a Utah State, right? They just are going to have a leg up because of guys they returned in a core. And so I was nervous there that there would be a price to pay early in the season. There was, by way of the Youngstown State Penguins, which if you really size things up could be a massive difference maker between them being in a lot more fun conversations right now. And the team that they would be come January, February, March, I was very high on what they could become. And, another portion of that was F.A. Demeril, the big guy who continues to develop. And it weirdly almost feels like I don't even like talk about him anymore, but he had, I think it was 14 and 11 against San Diego State, who's the, tough and they play hard sort of stuff. And he went in there and he kind of dictated the game, like down low. I mean, he packed Odin at the rim, who tried to dunk on him, who's kind of the resident tough guy over at San Diego State, and he punked him. And, if FA is playing really good, they're a different team. And then the last thing, and you've talked about this a ton, Tom, is just Jaden Henley. And when I did the NEAK rating for GCU, I went off Nana because I believe Nana is GCU's best player. If you look at the full scope of things, I think what he brings to the table, I just consider, I guess, Nana their best player, a guy who you're not going to rely on a ton offensively. And then it kind of falls to Jaden Henley, and I graded him down. He had a pretty bad 3-week stretch there where I think he was shooting about 27% from the field. And, I think 15 from 3. He's had a good last 2 games. He got benched in the San Diego State game in the second half with like 8 minutes left. He took an awful 3 and airballed it. I just said in my podcast, I don't think Bryce looked to see if it was going in. The second he shot it, he turned to the bench and grabbed someone to check in for him. And he went right back in a minute and a half later and was incredible. So it's kind of, he's a really special player. I know he really wants to win. And, it's kind of the same thing as Dylan Andrews. Like if you get the best version of Henley, just the easy offense and transition that GCU needs, because, the offense is brutal. 336th in the nation shooting the 3. Like if they can just find offense and just kind of scrap it together on that end and look okay, they can hang. And they're, I think they're weirdly a really good fit for these rankings a week later as a team who fits the bill for this. And in the same breath, we saw the San Jose State first half. Sure, San Jose State made some shots, but guys, that's still the reality. I mean, they went on a 36-12 run against GCU. San Jose State did. So, it's kind of, they put themselves in a spot where it's win 3 or 4 and you're in. the problem that comes with that is you have no grace, right? Utah State, I would imagine they're going to get to Vegas. They're going to have a little bit of grace, just a little bit. GCU doesn't have that. And so unfortunately, you pay the price early in the season, they get better. But now the expectations are heightened. And so we'll see how they do. They've got a really nice schedule down the stretch, really good, especially leading into Vegas. I think that's a big call out is what are teams coming off of heading to Vegas? Those last 2 games, and GCU's got a great schedule. So we'll see how it shakes out. I love the way they're playing. I also love the way they were playing before they went to UNLV. So, and that's the Mountain West. That's not a GCU thing, right? That's a Mountain West thing. Yep. So that's the joke, right? Is like you don't learn, you're not part of the Mountain West until you lose to UNLV. So we'll see what they can do here. Focus test on Saturday against Wyoming, though, man. You gotta we'll get a better idea on Saturday of this GCU team for sure.
By the way, I got an interesting perspective from Jason Kelly last night regarding regarding UNLV and why they played so well against GCU. He said it was because it was more like an away game. They play better on the road, and when they played in the Thomas and Mack, GCU had said bust 500 students up there. And so he said UNLV was right at home feeling like they were on the road, and that's why they played so well.
Sad but true.
It was hilarious. Yeah. It is sad. I want to add one thing about GCU. I think the one thing that I've seen, and I wasn't as high on them earlier in the year like Tom, but as the season's gone on, I've underestimated a couple of things. Number one, Owusu Anana has really we didn't maybe take into consideration he sat out for a year, and it took him a month or 2 to get going, and you can see the improvement, and as he's improved, that's really helped out. I think that's helped Demeral's development, and Demeral's come on as well. But the other one was Brian Moore Jr. has been what I would categorize as a little bit of a disappointment. That's been completely counterbalanced by the fact that I don't know if anybody expected Micaiah Williams to be as good as he's been. And so the two of them together are good. It's just come in a little bit different form. And so I do like what's happened with GCU. The only concern I have, there's a couple of things. Number one, we've talked about the offense and some of the shooting. The second one is the depth without Caleb Shaw. And I don't know where they're at with Caleb Shaw right now, but I think he's, again, it's the bench thing. It's the roles, responsibilities. He got into the starting lineup and helped, but he could come off the bench or start, and he adds a lot to the depth of the team. Do you know where he's at right now, Brennan?
It's not good. Bryce hasn't given us formal word, so won't say anything further, but it's not great.
That's okay. Not good.
I will hold up my towel, my Go Lopes towel,
nice.
Which I got when I went down there. So I do want to see them do well. It's been fun having them. We got a wrap, gang. This has been good. Yep. The discussion's been great, but I want to get your thoughts. Obviously, in the order: Utah State, San Diego State, New Mexico, Grand Canyon. Do you see anybody as a legitimate dark horse in this group? In the others beyond those 4?
I think you have to say UNLV. As much as we give I don't know about you guys, but I give Pastner grief and stuff, and they're the butt of jokes. I mean, look, Gibbs Lawhorn is on a heater, and he can win a game by himself. So I don't think they can win 3 games in a row, and that even gives them the 7-10 game or whatever they're playing on Wednesday. I don't think they can win 3 games in a row, but they can certainly win 1 and scare somebody else on Friday night. So we'll see. I don't expect it to happen, but that's who I would take.
Yeah, I would say a few quick things to call out here. All are going to be in regards to the NEAK rating. First is Colby Garland, who I mentioned a little bit earlier. People might have been shocked when they read that to have him at 8, but he is legitimately really awesome and really good. And Nevada unfortunately paid the price for that on Saturday. And you got an idea of you just have these guys that are kind of legitimately good who could maybe take over these games. Fresno's fascinating with their backcourt. I'm not saying I don't like Fresno. I'm just saying if Hydebreeder goes nuts from 3, Collins is doing stuff, Gort, they've got stuff going on there. And then obviously Colorado State from 3, you kind of start going down this list and you're like, oh my gosh. And then I watched Dre Gibbs Lawhorn control that game against GCU. and they threw everybody they had at him that was warm and available, and nobody had an answer. And I think Tom's spot on. Like, listen, UNLV, I think Jason and Mike Cooper have said they haven't beaten anyone other than Air Force, I believe, in the conference tournament, like 8 years or something like that.
It's 11 years now.
11 years. And I don't know. Like, would you put money on them winning a game, or would you put money on them losing by 20? I have no idea at this point. And that's what makes them so special. They're going to be must-see TV. I think every game's going to be awesome, but you start to talk yourself. That's what was fun about these rankings, I think, to finally close it out here, is you go through this and you're kind of like, well, Colorado State could get hot from 3. And, I don't know, Fresno maybe. And so I think these games are going to be interesting. The seeding is going to matter. The matchups are going to matter, Tom. If, I talked about on my podcast, if you beat someone twice in the regular season, or you could beat them 3 times, like, that's tough to do.
True.
And so I think we've got so many really good storylines, and lots before them, but going into Vegas, this is just going to be fascinating. Final answer is, I don't know if anyone's going to be able to repeat what that team did last year, Steve. I don't think any of these Mountain West teams are primed for it. Utah State's just regular good, I think. But, I don't know even about that ceiling either, because I just think it's respect to Nick Clifford. Like, you've seen it translate to the NBA. He's big. He can defend. He does it all. And I don't know. I don't think anyone's going to be able to do that, but it was a fun exercise to see who might be best set up for it.
So I do want to add a couple of things in terms of dark horse, and to feed the UNLV thing. Again, this plays along the theme of playing at home. Maybe it'll feel like a road game because they're playing in front of more people than they're normally playing when they're at the Mountain West tournament. When
Very
there's
true.
10,000, 12,000 people, maybe they'll respond differently. That's number one. So I think UNLV is kind of an interesting case here. But I want to mention something else, and that's I happened to run into a certain head coach in the Mountain West today. You obviously know who it is. I talked to Ali about it, and I said, Ali, I'm doing a show tonight, and tell me who you think who's a dark horse. And one of the funny things, the first team he mentioned was Fresno, and he said I would have thought he said I'm not real big on Fresno right now because they just had, I forget the kid's name, but the kid who broke his leg and is out for the year. They lost a shooter, and Ali said, one of the things that can happen is teams can get hot if they have shooters, and Fresno has some shooters.
Yeah.
And he said, but I think the kid being out is going to hurt them. And he started.
Is that Hydebreeder that ended up being out?
No, not Hydebreeder.
Okay.
It's the other guy.
It's Douglas.
Douglas.
Okay.
Yeah, and he
because I know Hydebreeder was hurt. I wasn't sure if that was him recently.
But Douglas has a broken leg, fractured leg, I think, something like that. But and then we started talking about other teams and this and that, and he said, the one thing that that drove us last year was we couldn't miss. We just shot lights out. And he said, of all the teams, even at he said Grand Canyon. The problem with Grand Canyon is they don't very often shoot lights out. They're not a great offensive team. They're good. They have a good defense. And he talked about San Diego State. He talked about Utah State. And he said, New Mexico is the only team in that top 4 that can go off. And he said that, and even though they're in the top 4, he said they're a dark horse just because of the fact that they could play 3 games and just shoot lights out. But I think all in all, he doesn't. I don't know if he really sees a dark horse.
Right.
So anyway, let's wrap. Final thoughts, gentlemen. Go ahead, Tom.
I thought Brennan made a good point right there. Like, it was a good exercise to do. I don't know that anybody can do it. And what he said was perfect. Utah State's a good team. They don't need to go on that type of run. They're a good team. I don't see it from anybody else. But look, maybe we'll be surprised and it'll be 2 in a row that it happens like that. It doesn't necessarily have to be 11 in a row, but somebody to get hot and win a few games to qualify and then maybe throw a scare into somebody in the first round and win a game. Who knows? But I don't see it, but I'd love to be wrong.
Yeah, it's just going to be an awesome last few weeks. And you got it. Like I was talking with someone, they're like, how's Mountain West play been? I'm like, guys, I'm exhausted. Like, and I only go to a few away games. I'm like, man, this stuff just night in, night out. Like I just stay up to watch the UNLV Fresno game because I couldn't turn it off. It's like, I like basketball enough. This thing, I have to watch this. How is this thing going to end? Like, and it's just nonstop. The ebbs and flows week in, week out. It is a lot. And so I think you kind of walk away just like blown away by, the staffs and the players and everything, and just all that goes into this. And the ref chaos, obviously we know it seems to be a story night in and night out, but it's it's a good reminder. There are all sorts of stuff going on in college basketball right now. We know people have been all over GCU for the Amari Bailey situation. We got players here potentially not paying people out, but I'll tell you what, man, it's just a good reminder. Like, you see a game like Tuesday, just like why you love the sport, man. It's awesome. Like, just watching Birds taking ridiculous shots. Viejas was a great, arena. You're watching Nana go toe to toe with Guath and say, like, I just want to punk you today. And yeah, I just think, Mountain West is so awesome in that respect, that night in, night out, you just get that thing college basketball really can only provide, that is hilarity, confusion, and beautiful chaos. And I think that's why we all love the sport, spend so much time on it, covering it. So yeah, excited for this last month here, just like that. It happened really quick. So really excited for it.
Well, gentlemen, thank you so much for coming on. This has been awesome. I've had so much fun doing this. I've loved getting to know you two guys, Tom, over the last couple of years, Brennan, you this season. And, you just highlighted one thing. This league is really special. We're used to having multiple bids. It looks like it's going to be a fight this year down to the bitter end with getting more than Utah State in. That the other teams are right on the edge of at-larges. But hey, shout out to everybody who's tuned in, that's joined us. Shout out to you two guys for all the great work you're doing, and let's talk. We'll talk again in a few weeks.
We will. Thanks for hosting this, Steve. Brennan, good stuff. We'll talk again, fellas.
Absolutely. Thanks, guys. Appreciate it.
See you, boys. Two wonderful gentlemen. Brennan, like I said, a great young man doing fantastic content. I had the pleasure of meeting him when I went to the CSU game at Grand Canyon. A great experience overall, but I really value the relationship that I've built with Brennan. We've been on other shows together, and obviously with Tom. I enjoy getting together with Tom. We were doing a weekly thing last year, and now he's busy with BJ, but we still get together every few weeks, and we still talk and we still text, and he's an unbelievable resource. You guys need to follow Brennan on Go Lopes Radio, and make sure you're subscribing to Tom with Another Night in the Mountain West, the YouTube channel. That the stuff he's doing post game, bringing on players and coaches afterward, but it's his analysis that ultimately makes the show, and there's no one better at breaking down games than Tom Moser. So thank you to those two gentlemen. I want to talk briefly about the upcoming game. We'll do a little bit of just a little quick chat of CSU hosting San Diego State on Saturday. The Rams, and this is for my Ram fans. The Rams are on a 4-game streak, and it's been a positive. Last night was obviously a very good positive win over UNLV, where the Rams built a 15-point lead and then struggled down the stretch. And but all in all, very efficient. They were very, very good offensively. The ball movement was great. The screening was great. The reads were great. So offensively, they were really, really clicking, and they had UNLV on roller skates for pretty much the whole game as they scored 91 points. Defensively, they could have been better, but they managed to hold on. They struggled a little bit in the last few minutes with turnovers. I talked a little bit with Ali about this tonight, and I said, it was probably a blessing. As a fan, you start throwing things at the TV when they're turning the ball over and blowing a 15-point lead and letting UNLV back in the game. But it was a blessing in a way, because CSU has not played close games in conference. Most of their games have been 10-point games either way. And so it was the first time where they had a player that had to inbound the ball in the last 30 seconds with a lead. It's the first time they had to shoot 1-and-1s in the last 30 seconds in order to preserve the lead. And Jace Butler stepped up calmly and made those 1-and-1s. So the Rams are playing well. San Diego State coming off a brutal loss where they really didn't play very well in the second half. GCU walked all over them. San Diego State had burst into a 5-point lead at halftime, and then GCU outscored them by 15 points in the second half to win by 10, and they won going away. It was not a pretty sight for San Diego State down the stretch. They struggled to get anything into the basket, trying to come from behind. And credit to GCU, but San Diego State fell out of first place, fell out of a tie for first place, and they have a very, very tough stretch. The CSU game is the second of a 5-game stretch from after Fort Collins. I believe they go to Utah State. They have to go. I know they have to go. No, they go to New Mexico and they go to Boise. They play home to Utah State, but they've got three. Oh no, three tough roadies: CSU, New Mexico, and Boise State. And so it'll be interesting to see what happens. They really need, as Tom said, they need to close. They might need to close 5-0. They do not have a lot of a resume where they built up a lot of quad one activity. So anyway, it's